So you need to read loud enough so that we can hear you, okay? When you get to words you don't know, just try to say them out, okay?
When Abraham Lincoln was 19 years old, he visited the city of New Orleans. He saw things he would never forget. He saw black people being sold in slave markets. They were chained together and treated like animals. Lincoln watched little children being sold to strangers and taken away from their parents. Lincoln was heartbroken, and these memories stayed with him for the rest of his life. Although slavery was allowed in many states of the Union, Lincoln believed that it was wrong, and he was not afraid to say so. In 1858, Lincoln ran for the United States Senate against Stephen Douglas. There was much talk about slavery. Should the owning of slaves be allowed in new states that were just coming into the Union? Douglas said that the decision to own slaves was up to the individual person. Lincoln said that slavery must not be allowed to spread because it was wrong, but he knew that it would not be easy to end slavery in those states that had allowed it for so many years. Lincoln believed that it was important to keep the United States strong. He felt that slavery weakened the country. In one speech, he said the country could not last half slave and half free. He said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Lincoln lost the election to a Senate, but he became well known for his views. In 1860, he ran for President of the United States. The slave states opposed Lincoln as president. They did not want to abolish slavery. They threatened to leave the Union of Lincoln if Lincoln was elected. When he became president, the slave states carried out their threat. A terrible war broke out between the northern and southern states. At times, members of the same family were fighting against one another. In 1863, Lincoln gave an order called the Emancipation Proclamation, which ended slavery. The war finally ended 2 years later. The southern states once more became part of the Union, but slavery was no longer allowed. No more will little children be torn from their parents and sold to strangers. Abraham Lincoln had achieved his goal.
Okay, so just some questions. So who was Abraham Lincoln?
He was Abraham Lincoln. He was a person who was like 19 years old, and he went to New Orleans, and he seen a lot of things happen. He seen children being black children being sold to slave markets. They was chained, and they was seeing children being sold to strangers. And then Lincoln ran for the Senate, and the person he was going against was Stephen Douglas, but he lost the election. So then he ran for the president, and then he was president. Then a lot of people they had made a couple threats saying they were going to leave the Union if he was elected president. And then
so based on what you read there, and I'm glad you're referencing that piece. So what are some of the evils? Based on that, what are some of the evils of slavery? You know what evil would mean?
Bad things?
Mm-hmm. Very good, yes.
Children being chained and treated like animals, being sold to strangers they don't even know, and slavery, period.
Okay. And so can you look there and maybe figure out why the Civil War was fought? I'm sorry. The Civil War. Did you read it? Did it say anything about the Civil War?
Yeah.
Okay, what did it say about the Civil War? Well, why was it fought? Why was there a Civil War?
just I think they were saying
Okay, we'll come back to that one. Well, let's look at this part where it talked about part of the states were free. Remember when you read that they couldn't? So you think maybe that would have something to do with the Civil War? Can you find that in the text? What you just read about some of the states were free, some of the states had slaves. You see that? See that at all in the text?
that
Some of the states were
so the
free.
only go slaves be allowed. New state that was definitely to the union.
Maybe about the house divided against itself.
Mm-hmm.
You see that part?
Yeah, I just read that part.
Mm-hmm. See if you can find that part in there.
A house divided against itself cannot stand.
So
Lincoln lost it.
okay, you know what that may have meant?
I think that means like
You know what they're talking about when they say the house? They're talking about what?
the people that was being slaves, or I don't.
Yeah, that's but well, maybe Lincoln believed that it was important to read up. You see the sentence up. Why don't we start in 1858 again, and we'll point out some things.
In 1858, Lincoln ran for the United States Senate against Stephen Douglas. There was much talk about slavery. Should the only slaves be allowed in new states that were just coming into the Union?
Okay, so now what's the union?
I think like the area or like the community.
Okay, so that's what we would call the United States at that time. Was the union, okay?
Keep reading.
Mm-hmm.
Douglas said that the decision to own slaves was up to each individual person.
Okay.
Lincoln said that slavery must not be allowed to spread because it was wrong. But he knew that it would not be easy to end slavery in those states that had allowed it for so many years. Lincoln believed it was important to keep the United States strong. He felt that slavery weakened the country. In one speech, he said the country could not last half slave and half free.
Okay. So when we go back to the question about why was the Civil War fought, the Civil War, would mean that people within the United States were fighting against each other. So what do you think? Why do you think they may have been fighting?
I'm guessing because they didn't want Lincoln to be.
You just read because some people wanted there to be slavery, and some people
Didn't want slavery.
Okay, so that's why they were fighting. You think?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you see anything in there about the results of the Civil War?
Yeah. Well, the last paragraph when we say in 1863, Lincoln gave an order called the EP
Emancipation
Proclamation, which ended slavery. The war finally ended 2 years later.
Okay. All right. So what kind of questions do you have? Do you have any questions for me? I asked you some questions. Do you have some questions for me?
For the story?
For this story? Anything about it?
No.
Have you read something about that before?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.